Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell, and today we're going to talk about how being a bookish influencer will break you. I know this is a dramatic title, very clickbaity, but that's what we're here to talk about today. Creating content around books and how that will change your reading. I'm inspired to make this video for a couple of different reasons. One was a question at the end of the beginning of the year book tag that I did a few weeks ago, which asked what advice would you give to someone who's interested in creating a booktube channel? And I sort of just fumbled my way through that question, but I've really thought about it since that video is uploaded, and I have a lot more to say about it. And in combination with that, I've recently watched two videos that have really informed where I'm gonna take this conversation. One is a video called I'm Done by Jess Owens, and a second one called 5 Things I Have Brainwashed You Into Thinking Are Normal as a Book Influencer by Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Both of them are great videos, and I'll have them linked down in the comments below. So you're interested in being a bookish influencer potentially, or you are already a bookish influencer if you clicked on this video. And it doesn't have to be booktube, obviously Book Talk or Bookstagram or all these other different channels in which people make content around books. I just want to start by saying I love being a bookish creator. I love my booktube channel. It's one of my favorite hobbies that I've ever had. That being said, it has a lot of pitfalls. And so I think if you are someone who is new to being a bookish creator or is interested in becoming a bookish creator but you haven't started your channel yet, these are just some things to keep in mind. So it's gonna be a little chatty, but let's get into it. I think the first thing to consider is what your goals are with creating your bookish channel. For me, my goals were to have a space where I could talk about the books that I'm reading. I mean, that's basically it. If I get really down into the nitty-gritty of what my ultimate goal for my channel will be, it's not to have a full-time job creating bookish content. I actually don't want that. Hey, it's Editing Sandy here to say that I just want to make clear that I'm not criticizing people who become content creators for the purpose of having a full-time career as a content creator. I think that's totally valid. I just think that the road ahead for you is a lot harder if this is a career pursuit and not a hobby. But that's true of every career. People don't become pro athletes and have an easy road. Anytime you want to be pro anything, you have a lot more pressure and a lot more things to consider than a hobbyist does. So I just want to make clear that I am not disparaging people who want to do this as a job. That's just not the road that I have taken. And I am in a privileged position to be established in a career that I enjoy and do not feel pressure to do so. I also just want to note that throughout this video, I continue to say influencer and bookish influencer, and what I really mean is a content creator. There's a huge difference, I think, between the two. And a lot of it is obviously in the number of people who watch the content. I do not consider myself an influencer because I have 1,000 subscribers. I think anyone can be a content creator, not everyone can be an influencer. But because I already had the title for this video in my head when I was filming, I keep saying influencer, and wow, that's not even a word. Influencer, and what I mean is content creator. So just sub those out in your brain. But what I would really love is if I could make enough money through content creation to allow me to purchase all the books that I read. I think that would be so awesome if I could have a self-supporting hobby where I could support the authors that I really love every single time I want to read a book. That would be so cool. That would be the ultimate goal. But really the only reason I created this channel is because I wanted to talk about books and I wanted to make more bookish friends. And I don't have a lot of people in my real life that read the same types of books that I do or read as voraciously as I do or want to talk about books. And so yeah, this is my outlet to do that, and I love that. I think if you do go into being a bookish influencer with the goal that this needs to turn into my full-time income. That can definitely add way more pressure to the success that you feel or the pressure that you feel when you're making content. In addition to that, I think sometimes people don't come into being an influencer with the goal of being a full-time creator, but at the same time, sometimes people just get picked up virally instead of having more like a natural growth. And I say natural in quotes because they're obviously both natural, like, but some people grow really virally, really, really quickly. And some people like me don't get a lot of views on their channel. And so I've, been doing this for close to 3 years now, and I still have very few subscribers comparatively. And that's totally fine with me because, again, my goals for doing this are pretty simple. But for people who do grow really virally, I think that can also add a lot of pressure because suddenly you realize, oh, shit, I'm in the spotlight. Like, all of these people are coming to me. I need to make sure that the stuff that I'm putting out is like the top quality that I can do. I need to be at my best all the time. I need to be giving people the opinions that matter. And I think that's a valid way to feel, but it is a self-punishing sort of way to experience content creation. So I think the way that you approach it can definitely lead to more or less feelings of burnout. Because, let's be real, sometimes you just don't want to create content all the time. Sometimes you're not feeling well, or you have important things going on in your life, or you just have like better plans for the weekend. Or sometimes you're just really enjoying a book and you don't want to vlog about it or talk about it. You just want to experience it and enjoy the experience of reading a book. But the way that algorithms work, if you're not putting out content on a regular basis, then you get punished for that. Your views will go down significantly if you're not maintaining a schedule. And that doesn't mean that you have to post 2 or 3 times a week, which I know people who are trying to grow quickly or who are trying to be big influencers, they do publish multiple times a week. And I don't understand how they do that. I spend so long on all of my videos and I still feel like the quality is very mid, and I cannot possibly imagine publishing more than 1 video a week. That's like, it takes it out of me. But I really admire the people who do pull that off. And I think part of it is that a lot of those people who do that are full-time content creators, but a lot of them aren't, and that just boggles my mind. But it's like hard to come up with content ideas sometimes. It's not hard, I guess, but it's not always easy to come up with content ideas or content ideas that you think will be good or will be hits. And, if you are creating videos and posting them on a platform that is publicly viewable, then you obviously want people to watch the videos. And so it sucks when your videos don't get watched. Like, it hurts a little bit. You're like, oh man, like that was such a good video. I put so much effort into that, and like only 50 people watched it. And this like throwaway video that I didn't spend any time or thought on suddenly like has 6,000 views. That kind of stuff has definitely happened to me before, and is something that I'm sure every content creator experiences at some point or another. But yeah, so it's hard to come up with ideas sometimes, and unfortunately, negative content gets clicks. Negative content is not necessarily what everyone wants to be doing. I don't want to be out here hating on books or hating on authors. It is fun to watch that sort of content, and it is fun to make that sort of content sometimes, but I don't want that to be why people are coming to my channel. And I think for other people who feel the same way, but who feel the pressure like, oh, this is my paycheck, I need to get these clicks, that can definitely like make your risk of burnout even higher if you're making content that isn't what speaks to your heart. And then because content ideas are sometimes hard to come up with, it's easy to fall back on kind of the standards in the community, like a monthly TBR video, for instance, where if you're unfamiliar, TBR is to be read. And so people will just make videos once a month that is all of the books that they plan to read in the upcoming month. TBR videos are super popular all across the community. But I feel like For content creators who do make TBR videos, especially people who consider themselves mood readers, which means they don't really plan their reads in advance. They just pick up a book when it looks good to them or it sounds interesting. The TBR videos can be really punishing because you've basically committed to your audience that you're going to read these books, and then, halfway through the month, you realize you don't really want to read any of those books anymore because now these other new shiny books are here. I think that sort of content specifically can be really hard for bookish influencers before they really find their style and what works for them best. Also, creating bookish content takes a long time. Like, if you want to be a creator on the internet, there are probably so many other ways to do it that takes a lot less of your time. Like lifestyle content creators or whatever, you're already out there living life, doing the things. So now you just have to film it. With books, I mean, it's not like I wasn't reading books before, but if I want to create content around books, I have to read the books, and then I have to film, and then I have to edit, and then I have to make thumbnails, and I have to upload, and blah, 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 blah. So it's like, the reading the books takes the most time, but like all of the filming and editing takes a really long time too. And so it's a time-consuming hobby, not just to be a reader, but to be a bookish creator. That time suck can definitely take time away from other hobbies that you might enjoy. I spend a lot less time watching television than I used to. I still watch TV, but I watch significantly less of it. And for some people, that might not be a good thing. Again, this is another thing that can lead to burnout. If TV is one of the ways that you unwind, and reading this intensely, it feels like homework, but you feel like you have to do that, and so you don't have time to relax and just watch TV or video games or whatever your relaxation is, then suddenly you're like punishing yourself for really no reason. I say no reason, obviously, because I'm not trying to do this for money. But yeah, it can be really tough to put yourself in that situation and to have less time to do other hobbies that you enjoy. Being a bookish influencer can also make you feel a little bit like you're selling yourself. You're trying to put yourself out there and like look appealing and sound appealing and say the right things that are going to get people to like you all the time. And that's tough. On top of that, if you're trying to make a lot of money doing this, then you're probably going to have ads in your videos where you're talking about products and you're getting sponsorships. And so you're kind of having to shell for capitalism a little bit, and that doesn't always feel good or isn't really what the point of your videos is, or the love that brought you to these platforms to begin with. And so all of these things are just things that I see other content creators struggling with, and so I thought it was worth mentioning in this video. Not that every content creator struggles with this. I'm sure many content creators love this kind of stuff, and that's why they're so good at it. But this is something that definitely, I think, breaks a lot of influencers. Being a bookish influencer completely changes the way that you read books. And unfortunately, even I find this to be true. You feel a lot more pressure to read popular books. If books are getting a lot of hype, then you want to have an opinion about them, because if you're talking about popular books, people are interested in hearing about those opinions. It makes you feel like you need to stay up to date on all the new releases, because generally new releases are what are getting the buzz and are becoming popular. So that can dissuade you from reading a lot of really great backlist books that maybe you've wanted to read for a really long time. It makes it hard for a lot of bookish influencers to finish series, because they start a series because the first book came out and it was really hyped, but by the time book 2 or book 3 comes out, there's so many other new things that are happening, and they feel the need to stay, on the front headlines, and so they never get around to finishing the series. These are not all problems that I have. I really am a completionist, so I love finishing series that I start as long as I enjoy the series. But this is an issue that you might face if you are on the bookish internet. It makes it harder to mood read, like I've said, because not just because of TBR videos, but because you get the idea in your head that you need to read for content. You need to create content that is entertaining, and just randomly picking up books doesn't necessarily always make the most interesting content. That doesn't mean you can't and that people won't watch it. It just means you're not gonna get all of the views that you possibly want. For some people, and for me as well, it makes it harder to browse in bookstores, because I have so many hundreds of books on my TBR. Whereas when I was a kid and when I was growing up, I would just go into a bookstore and I would browse for hours and I would find all these books that sounded really good. And now when I go into a bookstore, I'm looking for the books that I already know I want to read. And so that makes like visiting a library or bookstore experience a lot different. Not necessarily bad, but I do miss the feeling of just like randomly finding a book that totally sweeps me away. It also creates pressure to finish books, whereas if you weren't reading them for content, you might just DNF them, because like, why would you force yourself to finish this book if you're not enjoying it? Well, if you're reading it for a vlog or a specific thing that you're doing, or you've already told your viewership that you're gonna read it, you feel pressure to finish it. Or sometimes you'll feel pressure to read a book so that you have a valid opinion on it, which is something that Jess Owens mentioned in her video. I don't think this is true. I don't think you need to like finish a series to have a valid opinion about the series or anything like that, or that you need to read every book by an author to have a valid opinion about that author. Your opinions are valid. But it does create pressure from the imagined audience that you think is out there. For whatever reason, we create these things in our mind, but the pressure feels real. Also, if you're the type of person that before you were a bookish influencer, you read manga or fanfic or comic books and things like that, those sorts of content, from what I understand, get a lot less views on bookish content channels. And so a lot of people who maybe used to read those sorts of things read them a lot less after they become a bookish influencer. And that's really sad. I don't think you should have to give up reading what you love just because it doesn't get as many views. Same with like, I don't think literary fiction people get as many views as genre fiction. And that doesn't mean that there aren't huge literary fiction booktubers out there. There definitely are. But for the most part, I feel like people who read more general fiction books have a harder time getting views than people who read thrillers or fantasy or romance or whatever the hot genre of the moment is. I think also being a bookish influencer or consuming a lot of bookish content can totally skew your view of what is normal for a bookish influencer. And this is really what Beautifully Bookish Bethany's video was about. But you see booktubers all the time with these huge, beautiful home libraries, and it makes you feel like I also need to have a big, beautiful home library. And let's be real, I mean, I do dream of having a big, beautiful home library, and I hope that that happens someday. But I also check out most of my books from the library on Kindle. So it's like not a big deal. I've been doing this for several years and I rarely have books to hold up for the camera. I just flash them up on the screen because you can find pictures on the internet. And I think that's a totally valid way to be a bookish influencer, and you do not need to own a single book to be a bookish influencer, but you certainly feel the pressure to do so, and I understand that one for sure. Also, you see people who have just like beautiful videos with tons of great editing and lighting, and it makes you feel like you need to have a really expensive, nice camera to do all these things too, and that's absolutely not true. You can totally film on your phone or webcam or whatever you have available. I will say, I think sound quality is more important than picture quality for this kind of stuff, because if you can't hear well, then your content means nothing. There's also a lot of pressure to read more. Always more. You see bookish influencers, or at least I follow a lot of bookish influencers that read hundreds of books a year. Hundreds! How is that possible? I mean, I know how it's possible. It's because they do this for a full-time job, but that's certainly not normal. I read 100 books last year. No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I read 100 books and I was like, damn, I am killing it. And that is true. I was killing it. But I think the average American only reads like a handful of books a year. Like on one hand, you could count the number of books in a year. And that's totally fine. Like, you are still a reader. You're still valid as a bookish influencer, even if you only read a handful of books a year. For me, I feel like when I started my booktube channel, my goal that year was to read 36 books, I think. I wanted to read 3 books every month. And that felt like a huge stretch for me because I had been on a multi-year reading slump where I was reading only like 1 or 2 books a year. I ended up reading almost double that. I read like 61 books my first year on BookTube. And it's because I'm on BookTube and I was creating content around it, and I felt more pressure to read that I read so much more than I had even planned. And I love that. I love that being a bookish influencer pressures me to pick up books when I might otherwise do other things, because I love reading and I love being able to talk about books. But that's not always a good thing depending on what your goals are. There's also, I feel like, pressure sometimes to have really pretty editions of the books that you love. Special editions of books are really hot right now and they are so expensive. It's mind-boggling, I think, how much some of these like special editions can cost. I don't own any special editions of books. I do own a few autographed copies of books, but a lot of those I even got used. So you don't need to spend any money, I don't think personally, to be a bookish influencer. But because a lot of bookish influencers spend a lot of money on bookish things, it feels like the thing you need to do to be a bookish influencer. And that's not true. It's just that a lot of people who do this for a full-time job have the disposable income to do those things. And it's fun to have special editions, and it's fun to have a lot of books. But you don't need to do that. Hi, baby. And of course, that leads right into like doing big book hauls. Book hauls are a popular type of video, like TBR videos that bookish influencers like to do, where we talk about all the books that we've bought recently. But sometimes it's not like, oh, these are all the books that I bought in the last 3 months. It's like, oh, I went to the bookstore today and I bought 30 books. You know, that sort of thing is not sustainable for the average person. And I don't think it is sustainable even for the average bookfluencer. So just because you see that a lot doesn't mean that's what the majority of people who are reading a lot are doing. You can totally do library book hauls. You can do little free library book hauls. The overconsumption of books is a thing that is discussed a lot on the bookish internet. And buying books is its own hobby that is valid. Reading books is its own hobby that's valid. There's a Venn diagram where these things overlap, but they don't have to. So I guess my synopsis statement here is that being a bookish influencer will change how you read. Not maybe in all the ways that you think, and definitely all the ones that I talked about in this video do not affect me. I would say most of the ones in this video do not affect me, but they're ones that I've heard other people talking about or that I've seen happening in other parts of the bookosphere. And so these are just things to keep in mind. I think knowing about these influences helps to buffer against them. And also, I'm just older and more established than a lot of bookish influencers out there. I'm in my mid-30s and I am a very self-confident person, and I feel because of that I am generally less influenced by what's hot. That doesn't mean I'm not influenced by these things. I definitely want views. I want to be reading the books that everyone else is reading. I get FOMO really bad. And I definitely read more new releases than I used to. I read more popular books than I used to. I don't think these are bad things, but it's just something to note because I didn't used to read this way, but now because I'm a booktuber, I do. I plan all of my reads for the year in advance. For the year. I've already started thinking about books that I'm going to read in 2026. I have a list. Now, yeah, that is totally psychotic, and that list will change probably 1,400 times between now and then. But these are the types of things that I never would have done before I had a bookish channel. I also plan reads around entertainment value, around the idea of content in a way that I didn't even during the first year or two that I was on BookTube. But now I try to plan, even though I don't really change the books that I want to read too much, I try to arrange them in times of the year with other thematic books in a way that makes more sense for entertainment content value, I guess. So yeah, those are just a few of the ways that being a bookish influencer has changed the way that I read. I definitely wouldn't say it has broken me, but it has definitely changed me, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with changing the way that you read because of an additional hobby. If it gets to the point where it is causing burnout or causing you to overspend your budget or not enjoy a thing that you used to love, that's when it becomes a problem. and can definitely break you. So those are just some things that I think it's important to keep in mind if you're thinking about creating a bookish channel or platform of some kind. I think there's healthy and unhealthy ways to go about it, and that it's a discovery process you will have to figure out for yourself. I never would have guessed before creating this channel that my reading would change the way that it has, that I wouldn't be able to browse bookstores the same way, or that I would plan my reading really far in advance. But here I am. I'm still loving reading. I'm still loving creating bookish content, and it's all worked out fine. So I think if you want to create a bookish channel, do it. There's absolutely no reason not to. It's super fun, I think. I've learned so much about video editing and how to talk about books, and I've made new friends, and it's been super duper fun. It's not for everyone, but you won't know till you try. Go for it. I hope to see you out here on the bookish interwebs. Let me know down in the comments below if you are already a bookish influencer, which of these most spoke to you about the ways that your reading has changed or changes that you've noticed in your content because of the way that you read now. I'd love to hear about it. Thanks so much for tuning in and hanging out, and hit the subscribe button down below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you again next time.